Now, some developing news out of Italy this hour, and an unwelcome milestone in many ways, because the number of COVID-19 deaths has risen by 427 to 3,405, which means that it is overtaken or has overtaken China's total number of deaths. Our correspondent Sally Lockwood is in Rome this evening, and it is turning into quite a desperate story there, Sally.
That's right, Mark. Italy now has the greatest loss of life globally, a rather huge and horrifying milestone for this country. And it's made particularly more grim because Italy still has far fewer cases of COVID-19, of coronavirus, than China. Now, it's in part down to Italy's older population. It has the second oldest population in the world after Japan. But it's also in part down to the pressure on the healthcare system that we are seeing in the north, in Lombardy. To give you an idea of the pressure and how bad things are up there, the military was called in overnight to help transport some of the bodies because the infrastructure there is simply not coping. The mayor of Bergamo, who spoke to me a few days ago, explained he'd had to close the cemetery because they can no longer cope with the hundreds dying there every day. The church in the cemetery had been turned into a temporary morgue, and soldiers were called in overnight to transport some of the coffins away in army vehicles. Now, Lombardy has one of the most sophisticated healthcare systems in Europe, but they are now lacking just the basics. They are lacking staff, ventilators, oxygen, beds. 8% of the people who have been infected with coronavirus in Italy are medical staff. Meanwhile, 60 million people in the country remain on a strict lockdown, something that was extended today. That was expected to be lifted on the 3rd of April, and now it is in place with no end date. We've been keeping an eye on the number of people dying in the UK and how that compares to Italy. It is following a very similar pattern. There's no guarantee that it's going to escalate in the same way here, but we simply don't know. Nevertheless, the UK and other European countries are following a strikingly similar path.
So just to give you some more information from Italy, some positive news. There is a city near here, a small city with about 3,200 population that has eliminated the coronavirus. How did they do that? So what they did was they tested everyone, and anyone who was showing any signs of symptoms were completely isolated. Now, the town was completely locked down. People were not allowed to leave their homes, but the medical staff went door to door testing people, and they were able to completely separate anyone who was, completely isolate anyone who was showing symptoms. And then they did a test again after, and the results were 0. They had no new cases. All the cases were eliminated in a sense. So this was the town of Vaux. It's not actually quite far from where I live. So that's a positive sign. So it's showing that testing, you have to test. Now, something very worrying about the numbers here in this video. She talked about 8% of healthcare workers being infected. Now, I uploaded a video yesterday, or it uploaded today, where in Ireland, 20% of the new cases are healthcare workers. Now, Italy is struggling with 8%. You really need to keep an eye on this number of new cases. If that's above 8%, you're going to be in trouble. At the moment, Ireland is not in trouble because they have a very low number of cases. But watch that number of the numbers of infected, the percentage of those infected. If it's healthcare workers and it's more than 10%, it's looking likely that the healthcare system will eventually collapse. Here in Italy, in Lombardy, the region, the most sophisticated healthcare system, one of the most sophisticated, I should say, in Europe, is struggling because they're losing staff. People are getting infected. They're not able to work, and of course they're lacking the basics. So it's important that staff in your country, wherever you are, that they have the resources available. ventilators, gloves, masks, protective gear. And otherwise, if that's not the case, you're going to see staff getting sick and not being replaced, and then the numbers increasing and increasing. Let me know in the comments, guys, what the situation is where you are. Have you seen any problems with the healthcare system where you are? And as always, your comments are much appreciated. Thanks.